Ever thought about the power of the cloud? Apparently just a fluffy thing, right? But one which grants you dominion over the whole world from the comfort of your home. Think about it. You don't have to be a genius. Just use the cloud. Let's hear from our panel experts on cloud over the edge into the cloud and coexisting in a digitalized future. We are thrilled and privileged to host Mr. Jatinder Singh Pavla, Senior Vice President, Sales Marketing CEM, ST Telemedia Global Data Centers India, as our moderator for the session. Mustafa Loni, Senior Vice President, Middle East, Africa, and Greater India, Uptime Institute, as a speaker. Vikash Prasad, Director, Sales Infrastructure Services, Kindrel, as a panel speaker, and Amarjit Gupta, Chief Executive Officer, Lightstorm Telecom Ventures, as an esteemed speaker of our panel. Over to you, Mr. Pavla.
Absolutely. Just confirm if you're able to hear me.
Yes, we are able to hear you.
Great. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Jatinder Singh Pabla, and I will be the host for this session. We have the honor of sharing this panel with three very knowledgeable members. While they've been briefly introduced, let me just share a few more details about them. Mr. Mustafa Loni, who has a deep understanding of data center and information technology across emerging markets, and he is currently the Senior Vice President in Uptime Institute, covering the entire emerging markets. If you have ever heard of tier ratings in DC industry, you know that it's being provided by Uptime Institute, so that's how you can relate to it. Mr. Vikas Prasad, who is a business leader and has more than 2 decades of sales leadership experience across various industries, including hybrid cloud managed services. He's currently the Director of Sales for Infrastructure Services at Kindrel, which was previously known as the Managed Infrastructure Services business of IBM, which was one of the leaders in this domain. So he brings a very significant perspective to the entire discussion. And then Mr. Amarjit Gupta, who brings deep network domain leadership experience spanning across more than 3 decades. He is currently the CEO of Lightstorm Telecom Ventures, which has stated that they are focused on building India's first career-neutral telecom infrastructure provider in the cloud world. So, welcome. Let me welcome all three of them once, and thank you for taking your time out for this interesting session. Let me move on to today's discussion now. We know that cloud powers the world today. In today's session, we will try to decode what powers the cloud. We'll discuss things like drivers, blockers, who are the providers. We'll also discuss a customer's perspective. Personally, I have sold cloud since when it was not even known as cloud. First for at least almost a decade in Microsoft, and now I'm selling it as co-location service for the last 3 years in STT India, which is the leader in co-location industry. It has been a tremendous ride, and even today, this technology is growing at more than 30% CAGR. That brings the first question to the table. We know that IT infrastructure outsourcing, including cloud, co-location, was already growing tremendously, and the pandemic has accelerated it further. So I want to ask all three eminent panel members on what are their views on the growth which has been achieved till now, and what is the future potential of this technology in India. And when they respond, I will also request them to talk about what do they see as key drivers fueling this growth. So I will request all team members one by one. Let me start with Mr. Amarjit first. Over to you, Mr. Amarjit.
Thank you, Jatinder. Firstly, I think thank you for inviting us, and it's great to be in this forum, and it feels great to be amongst industry colleagues after quite a while because of pandemic. To your question, I think very topical and very timely. Let me start by globally, what's the picture, right? We all exist because of connectivity, cloud, and data center, because people consume cloud services, also known as digital services. So digital services globally, I think it's worth noting, is about 15% of global GDP. And very few people know that since 2000, it's been outpacing the global GDP by about 2x, which means it grows twice as fast as global GDP. Okay. So now, to contextualize in India, of course, you get a different number when you speak to various people, but give or take a little bit, we're about 5% of GDP. That's what the digital economy represents. But if that's not important, most important is the stated country mission is to quadruple it by about next 5 years, which means you're growing at about 400%. So that's the context of growth, which actually leaves room for both an onerous challenge as well as a huge opportunity, right? So for me, the growth of co-location services, the growth of data centers is directly related to the growth of digital services and how we can integrate data centers with connectivity and cloud experience to really make it work for the 20% of GDP that we all aspire for. So that's the context of the growth. I'll leave my comments here, but just by saying that even if we have to quadruple the industry over the next 5 years, it might take much more than many of us who currently exist. And that's perhaps the reason why I stand here today representing a startup called Lightstorm Telecom. We are born in the pandemic company. We've been born with a mission to make the cloud work. And in about 12 months to 14 months, we have connected up almost all of India's cloud in a fabric which has never been done so far. I'll leave my opening comments there, Jatinder. Happy to expand as we go forward.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot. Mr. Vikas, would you want to share your views from a service provider, from a services industry perspective? I think that brings a very interesting insight into this entire topic.
Yes, Jatinder. So Amarjit did talk about digital services, right? Now, we know that digital transformation has been the buzzword for the last few years, right? With almost every industry, small, medium businesses, large enterprises. Now, when these companies were moving operations to cloud, and adopting online productivity and collaboration services, the lockdown actually, the remote working necessitated by the COVID-19 pandemic was really an unexpected reality check on organizations for all of us. Right, and you must have heard about this, right? When just few months into the pandemic, Satya Nadella, the Microsoft CEO, said that companies had seen 2 years of digital transformation in 2 months, right? As its customers starts adopting clouds, and most of these cloud hyperscalers, grew in revenues because of the increase in adoption. Now, what was fueling this, right? What was fueling this growth? Now, before the pandemic, it was the BAU. I would not talk about it, whether it was disaster recovery or business processes, workplace, remote working. Keeping that aside, I would want to talk about 3 things, right, which we saw a real change in remote working. One, many companies today surrendered almost 50% of their offices, and the very fact that we are all connected on a virtual platform tells us that that's the way of working going forward. Second, the change in the business operations. If I have to go and buy vegetables today, the vegetable vendor flashes a QR code at me, right? Look at the way the digital payments have gained popularity here. There's been, of course, online shopping was there. It has increased for the simple matter that people have shifted to online mode much more than what it was earlier. And the entertainment options. How many of us, did subscribe to Netflix or any other OTT channels just to make sure that when we were confined within the boundaries of home, that was entertainment for us. And the third thing, finally, right, online education. Whether we upgrading our skills through a online platform or our kids attending school online. Right, all of that. When did we see this earlier? All of this was definitely fueled, did fuel the growth at the cloud. And I would say that this demand is here to stay. Right, it's only going to grow as we move forward. Right, and the potential is really huge. Back to you, Jatinder.
So I think very well said. All these are very strong drivers. Let me move on to Mr. Mustafa. Mr. Mustafa, you see a very different side of this entire growth. Every time someone builds a data center, they come to you. So what are you seeing in terms of growth drivers and the potential?
Oh, absolutely. In general, in the data center market in India, the cloud is a major contributor as well. Adoption of the cloud is a major contributor to the boom that's happening in the data center market. And if you look at all the research that have been done recently about the growth on the DC market in India, we're talking about minimum 8 to 12% growth year over year over the next 5 to 10 years. And this is going just to grow. There are so many growth drivers when you talk about this in India. We're seeing, as you mentioned, and that was also as well explained by the fellow panelists, the cloud adoption has been one of the best drivers into the market today, and that is leading to building new data center. I've seen a lot of announcement recently into the marketplace. And also there are other factors as well that are contributing into this. We are seeing also some government regulations in India that generated that for data generated in the country. So this is actually helping keeping the data within the country, where we're seeing now a lot of international players are coming, investing in the data center market in the Indian market today. Of course, the increase of internet penetration within the country. Today, India is a market that is maybe at 600 to 700 million people that have access to internet. We're going to see an increase into internet penetration in the years to come in India. Definitely, this will be a driver for a massive data generation. So we're going to be talking about big data to be generated in India, and also a lot of initiative around smart cities within the country. We're seeing a lot of smart cities projects announced by the government. It's also we're talking, I'm sure we're talking about artificial intelligence and machine learning as well. This also will generate a lot of data and will continue to push this growth further. Growth in cloud adoption, which role the cloud will play in all of this, and also how is the market can sustain into this demand by building more and more data centers into the market. We've talked about, the pandemic, the impact of the COVID-19 in the acceleration of the digital transformation across multiple sectors. We can go from end user industries to governments to BFSI. All the verticals across the market today have been pushed to accelerate the digital transformation. This has actually increased the pressure on the demand. And today, Indian market, we're talking about plus or 100 data centers in the market. Over the years to come, the need for data centers is going to be massive, and the requirement and the pressure on the organizations, the center organizations, is just going to increase. Which is all positive at the end. So that's my take on this.
Thank you. I think very well said. So that brings the second question. We are also one of the leading service providers of data center industry, and what we have seen is that the market is going to double in next couple of years. But still, we are at only 2 to 3% of global DC capacity, which obviously will double in next 2 to 3 years. So that definitely means that there are some blockers or there are some limitations because of which maybe the growth could be, or if you resolve those blockers, the growth could be even higher. The organizations know about the benefits of moving to cloud and infrastructure outsourcing. But what are those blockers which you believe still exist, which are preventing organizations to fully embrace cloud? And then what are vendors, including telcos, including system integrators, what are they doing to resolve those blockers to further accelerate this entire momentum? Let me ask Mr. Vikas from an actual implementation perspective. Mr. Vikas, can you hear me?
I'm sorry. Am I audible now?
Yeah, you're audible.
Okay. So I was saying that there are definite risks and challenges associated with cloud computing, and all the service providers must put those fears behind them before any organization kicks off on such journey. Right now, what are these? These are price and cost models as a primary driver. You have to look at a business case, a TCO and a ROI, right? Whether you're going to, it's not, while there are many technical advantages, it's not cheap. So you have to be very clear in terms of how is the pricing model and your business case panning out for the context that you are in, right? Depending on organizations. Migration, challenges in migration. Whether you are going to do a full migration, completely move your workloads onto cloud, do a big bang approach, or you're going to do piecemeal, stepwise, or you're going to have hybrid environments. Thirdly, the loss of control. Talk to any CIO and he would talk about shadow IT. And more so because of compliance and security concerns. The pandemic has really increased the compliance and security issues due to rapid implementations of cloud, right? In the response of the lockdown, and we did talk about that earlier. Another point is the technical debt, right? The technical dependencies and the unknowns, the fear of the unknowns that we will have, right? How would it behave? How would your workloads behave when it goes on cloud? And will you be able to manage it? And there the skill comes into picture, the lack of resources and the expertise. It's not easy for finding a resource to manage a cloud environment or manage security on cloud for that matter, right? And you need deep architecture and operational skills there. So the journey to cloud, and migration included, involves a significant investment planning and a mindset shift, I would say, right? So you asked a question as to how do we address this, how do we mitigate it, right? Now, what is primarily important here is to identify where cloud is a journey. It's not a big bang. It's not an immediate shift. That you wake up on the other side of the bed tomorrow and you are on cloud. It doesn't happen that way. So you have to. It's very important that you identify that the clients are at what step in their journey, right? Are they in their initial just experimenting, or they are contemplating of moving their core applications into cloud, or they're contemplating of deriving benefits, like Amajit said that born in cloud. Are there those companies who are looking at the next level? So what basically needs to be done is from perspective of a system integrator or an advisor, whoever is advising such clients, is to help them identify as to where are they in their journey, right? And then depending on where they are and how fast they want to move and where they want to move, right? How should they take the next steps? And of course, while doing so, minimize the risks of failure. Right? I mean, internally, when we go and approach this, we call it as a concept of AMBM, which is advise, move, build, and manage, right? So you have to first identify as to where is the client in this in these 4 blocks, and then how do you move the client from one block to another seamlessly, right? Addressing all the concerns that he has. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Let me take Mr. Amarjit's view, because network plays a very important part both in terms of capacity and cost. So, Mr. Amarjit, over to you.
So, look, let me just widen the perspective a little bit and give you maybe 2 different views. One, a recent view is an enterprise which is born in the cloud. We just built a backend in Lightstorm, a telco backend with not a single in-prem server. And that was by design. And we went out scouting and looking for established large system integrators, global vendors. I can tell you that the journey was far from easy. My CIO struggled to get the expertise to be able to move an application native to the cloud. I don't want to name the large global vendor, but we were sanguine. We want to do it that way because we are a born in cloud company, and we did it. Okay, so that's an experience. Learning over there, skills are important. Most of the renowned large label integrators and the skills they showcased did not fit the bill of my CIO, and rightly so, because we ended up boutique sourcing, boutique skills which know how to deal with Amazon as well as the migration to the cloud. Net result, we are up and running. with some degree of difficulty, but the sourcing wasn't easy. That's your enterprise perspective, and that's for somebody who's building fresh from with no legacy. Now, let me just widen the perspective. The cloud is also about consumers, and consumer clouds are a completely different picture. There, I think the challenges really are one of accessibility, cost, and quality. Don't please forget, about 700 million people in India today are still over narrowband connections. And also the cost for quality, when you adjust even per capita, the seemingly low cost of connectivity in India to a quality which, say, a Mustafa enjoys sitting outside of India, you'd calibrate that up, you'd find it to be the most expensive price today to access the cloud. So accessibility is important. And then when you juxtapose against the growth and scale of aspiration of cloud consumption, you really are with a daunting challenge. Over the pandemic, I saw at least two companies born in the banking sector, which is completely in the cloud. For those of us in India would know, a large part of the economic hemorrhage over the last 8 years was because the banking system failed. Large debts piled up. Now, these were two companies which I've been following, which have been completely built in the cloud. Imagine if the customer experience for these banks were not to match up to what was in the past. So I think the challenges are big. And where I'm leading to, I think it's a question of getting the infrastructure right. I come from an infrastructure background, and the strong belief I bring to the table is, without data centers working with bespoke cloud connectivity and good quality cloud migration and experience, the overall meal doesn't add up for an average consumer or an enterprise. So I think the onus is on many of us here on the table, on the industry side, to be able to start with designing things with the end goal in mind, whether it's enterprise or consumer, and then bringing it all together. So far, as many of you know, and most probably Jatinder is a veteran in data center industry, these have been siloed. And not because of any fault of anybody, but just the way it is. The ability to bring together all these pieces and scale it with the aspirations of a country which is average age is 30 years with the GDP of $20, you figure out that you actually are hitting a major problem to solve. What is the beauty of all this? If we solve for this problem, I can guarantee you can replicate the solution across the globe wherever you want to go. So, those are kind of tenets that we in Lightstorm are working to look at, particularly emerging markets, India, Indonesia, Thailand, Vietnam, with this large consumable population, problems to be solved, but opportunities demand complete innovation of the way we think and do business. So that's my perspective, Jatinder.
Thanks a lot for your input. So the next question is, I think, very relevant, and it is coming from all the discussions that we had. And I'll request Mr. Mustafa to share his views on this. So today, as you said, there are two sets of customers. One are Indian customers, which are those 700 million users, and then we also have the top global and local top enterprises. The Indian DC providers are serving both global and local top enterprises from Indian territory. Now, one of the key requirements to truly become global is also to adopt global standards and be world-class in terms of skills. I want to ask Mr. Mustafa, how are the providers solving these issues around skill shortage?
Into how to improve resiliency around facilities where they run these clouds from, and also how to improve the operations of those data centers by not only looking into the policies and the procedures they do, and how to align this with international standards, and also how to build resilient facilities by aligning those with international standards as well. Also, we're talking about a shortage of skills or lack of knowledge. I mean, this is not only linked or specific to the Indian market today. I mean, this is a global challenge and a global issue. So organization need to start in India today. I mean, especially with the demand that we're expecting around the data center business and the ICT in general, the organization need to start looking differently in the way they bring up their resources, the way they build their HR programs today, how they can build training programs around data centers, how they can get this, collaborate with universities, with all the main players in the industry today to bring the knowledge into this resources in the data center market, how to attract more resources into the data center market today, because there will be a pressure on the resources, and it's going to be very challenging for the small organizations today to retain their resources. We are seeing this already happening today. So most of the organizations, either they're facing major problems to fill in jobs openings that they have, or they are even struggling to keep their resources because they are being hired away by other organizations with better packages, with better perspectives for their careers and all of that. So this is something that organization will start suffering now. We're going to see a lot of movement around resources within the data center industry, but organizations again need to come up with a different ways of how to bring up more resources into the business, how to train these people, how to build HR programs where they can fast train these guys fast and change the game, because this problem is going to be a bigger challenge more than it is today over the next 5 years. I mean, and again, when we start talking about this, so it's not a local program, a local issue in India, but it's a global thing. But I think organizations in India today, data center companies or all organizations around the sector, they need to start seriously looking into this. And how also to adjust and their operations into this. So bring more clarity to the enterprise sectors when they move into those facilities or they decide to move into the cloud, and how they can give all this visibility about their operations, how they're aligned with those other international best practices, and how they build facilities that are resilient to respond to all this digital transformation we're expecting and the demand around data centers.
Got it. Understood that. I think that gives a very fair idea about what organizations are doing and what they have to do. My next question is around hybrid cloud and multi-cloud, which are the buzzwords today. So I want to ask Mr. Vikas, because I'm sure you will be seeing it up close, on why are people so excited about hybrid cloud and multi-cloud? How are these technologies solving their issues? And what are they doing with this? So let me hand it over to Mr. Vikas for his inputs.
So, well, multi-cloud and hybrid cloud is reality, right? And it's a healthy strategy, I would say, to have for any organization, right? Just like how you, when you invest for long term, you won't put all your eggs in the same basket, right? So the same principle applies to your IT assets and services that you consume, right? Or you will consume in the future. Now, hybrid cloud basically, because that would be the nature of your workloads, right? It may mean that you'll have to keep a few workloads at your data center, a few on public cloud, depending on the variability and depending on where it functions effectively and what's the right model for you. Multi-cloud for extracting the best out of the cloud service providers, right? You've got some workloads which work extremely well on AWS, and for Google, IBM and Azure. So deciding the right cloud or multiple clouds would be the strategy, and it would be the strategy going forward. Now, organizations and therefore the benefits, right? They can benefit immensely by adapting these kind of strategies, both in short term as well as long term. Right, because this will help them break the challenges of vendor lock-ins. They were limiting their bouquet of choices, and most importantly, to help them reduce their TCO, right? By getting the best cost-benefit analysis, looking at the features available with multiple vendors. Going forward, at Kyndryl and earlier at IBM, we are cloud agnostic. Based on our experience, we have a mature, methodology that we talked about in terms of, deciding what's the right journey for the clients, right? And at the same time, give them the right advice on the right strategy as well as the vendors, right? This way the clients can have best of all the cloud worlds in the most efficient manner, curated for their business needs, is what I would say.
All right, understood. So it is basically giving end customers more choice and flexibility, both in terms of deployment and cost. Understood that part. A very related topic, which is becoming very popular these days, is edge computing. So what are, let me ask Mr. Amajit, what is he seeing from his perspective on what are the problems which edge computing is solving, which was not solved by other forms of cloud, and how it is becoming more relevant for India?
Yeah. Thank you, Jatinder. This is a topic we love. We love this topic particularly because this is the perfect confluence of application, data centers, and connectivity. Edge is actually the starting point of edge is customer experience. The nearby co-location of applications, the ability to render it at the cost quality that the customer needs is really the edge. Now, various things for various people. The mobile industry calls it the mobile edge computing mix. The data center industry calls it edge data center. And if you talk to some of the application providers, they even call it a CDN network. Doesn't matter what you call it. In the end, it really tantamounts to how do you give content on demand, self-service, customized to what the customers want, both consumers at the edge, at the periphery of the geography, as well as enterprises with customers who are remote. I think that's a phenomenon which is here to come, and it's an unstoppable bus. The problem really is, how do we deal with this? Because it is counterintuitive to everything that telcos have done so far. Application providers have designed their application form, and I dare say even data centers have actually designed for. So the clear issue is, it's a chicken and egg. Where do you invest, and where does your traffic come in? Where do your customers come in? And I know many of us have privately chatted about it. So that's the conundrum which got to be solved. In my opinion, we have to be extremely careful, because if a country like India ends up replicating investment in resources at the edge, rather duplicating it, then we are in for trouble. So the ability to be able to conserve those resources, share it, operate it meaningfully, and still create user experiences which are quality enhancing really will make the edge work. So again, a great opportunity. Remember, a country like India is geographically dispersed. When I look at Indonesia, it's not really an edge opportunity, because you go about 50 kilometers out, you hit the sea. So that's an opportunity for us to design. A lot of work is going on, I know, at the background, but I really see this as a case for collaboration between application providers, data center providers, connectivity providers as a whole, to make this whole edge piece works, including mobile providers. Remember, mobile providers today can't grow their network unless they set up mini data centers. Very few people realize it is no longer a story about spectrum. So all those resources need to come together, and I think edge is a wonderful opportunity, particularly for a country like India with diverse languages, various kind of language applications running in different parts of the country, almost like mini countries in its sense. So I think that problem needs to be looked at comprehensively. We at Lightstorm are actively working with partners like the data center providers, large integrators, to be able to solve that problem holistically, rather than one piece of the elephant and nine blind man.
Sure, understood. Just maybe a very small follow-up question. Are you seeing a great implementation and use cases of IoT, AI, ML, which are driving edge computing in India yet?
Yeah, look, the opportunity for narrowband IoT, as well as, I call it learning applications rather than AI or ML, because at the end of the day, if the application learns and listens to you, is, I think, a great opportunity. We are seeing a lot of requests for those kind of implementation. Again, Jatinder, the problem really is, in a country like India, you have to think about speed, scale, and the ability to innovate at low cost. And that equation is work in progress.
Understood. Before I go to the next question, I just wanted to check with Manjeer on, because we started late, what time do you think we should wind up the session? I'll frame the questions accordingly.
I guess one question will be perfect, and one question from audience.
Got it. Got it. So my last question would be for all team members, and I think this is something which we can all learn from each other. How did the pandemic actually change your organization specifically with respect to your target segment, business potential, your closure cycles, the pricing pressures, and what are some of your key learnings that you want to share with everyone else? Let me start with Mr. Mustafa, and then we move on to others.
Sure. Definitely. The pandemic has changed the entire world, and this changed the way we operate, and a lot of, let's say, organizations, operations, and all of that. So it starts with definitely with working from home. So we've all gone through the lockdown where people have had to work from home, and the pivoting from office to work home, and also adjust, especially for us as an organization, is to adjust all our services, and a lot of the services have to be delivered remotely, so which has pushed a lot of pressure on our delivery teams and us as an organization to adjust. But it's something that we have learned and adjusted to, and it became a way, one of the models of operations, a model of deliveries that we have now within the organization. On the market in general, we have seen, as illustrated here today, we have seen a massive increase in the demand around data center in general and the services that we provide. The cycles, of course, of the cycles of business have become longer. Yes, a lot of organizations have moved into remote or let's say work, but again, sometimes it's very challenging to have to do business remotely with people, especially when you start initiating relationships with the new organizations, and it doesn't replace the face-to-face interactions with people. But most of the organization, including ourselves, would say we have adjusted. There was a lot of course, pressure on pricing. That's definitely, I think most of the organization has felt this, and then specifically in India as well. The key learnings that I would say that is how we moved as individuals and as organization from a complete different business model to a different one within a period of few months, and how to adjust all of this. It was really, let's say a very, very interesting experience, and we've learned a lot as an organization. And I think this is shaped a different business models for all organizations. A lot of organizations today have moved a huge number of the resources to work from home. They're offering even a certain incentives to remain from home. We're seeing a massive impact into this, and also the way that the organizations are delivering work. So yes, the pandemic has changed a lot the way we operate. I think this is here to remain. I think it's given an opportunity to us and all organizations we deal with to shift and adjust, and I think we will be here for the future, and it's something that we have spent time doing, and I think it's continue to be over the years to come as well. So.
Sure, thank you so much. Let me also ask Mr. Vikas, and also with a flavor on how cloud helped in making those changes, or at least even sometimes forced to make those changes.
Sure. Let me admit, right, at the start of the whole thing, we found it very, very difficult. Right? But at IBM, we were though very used to remote working. Have remote meetings. We had the systems in place, but it was very difficult to, for example, have a customer negotiation on WebEx, right, or doing a cold call on WebEx. So it took us time to get to learn that, to get used to it. Not only for us. I mean, it was. I'm sure it was equally difficult for the customers on the other side as well. What was really praiseworthy though was our delivery teams, right, who did manage not only to keep the the lights on, but also successfully completed migrations and failovers remotely, right? So that was commendable. And of course, cloud did help, in a lot of ways, right? Whether it was upgrading yourself, right? Those online courses which was available, whether those remote meetings, the multiple platforms today to do those, whether it is meetings or chats or collaboration, other collaboration tools that you have to make your online presentations effective. All of that helped, right? But having said that, I would say at this point in time that this is just the beginning, right? As we move forward, this is going to be, I'm sure there's going to be a way of life, right? It's the time that everyone is going to save, and we have all realized that in the last 1.5 years, wherein in traveling and taking those flights and then saving time for customer meetings, wherein you can meet some 3 or 4 customers from what you used to earlier, pre-pandemic. Learnings many, I would say. Accept uncertainty, accept that there is going to be uncertainty going forward, right? I mean, we never knew that, there was this first wave, second wave, and we're still thinking that the third wave is going to come, right? Despite everything, life goes on. So that's going to be the way of life. Now, responsibility is on us to make sure that, we invest in ourselves, right? Now, not only skills, which is related to our work, but also our health. And make that as a priority. All of us did move in that direction, depending on where we were and what times that we could save for ourselves. And thirdly, we started appreciating a lot of things, right? Whether it was a family, kids grow very fast and parents keep longing for attention. So, we all realized a new way of working, and we did pay attention to our families, which were ignored largely, in the pre-pandemic era. So I would say that that was the basic work-life balance, and I'm sure it's true for everyone that balance is not something that you will find, right? You'll have to create it for yourself.
Sure, thank you. Well put. Let me also invite Mr. Amajit Gupta to share his views, and then we'll hand it over to Manjeer for the closing session.
So look, I'll restrict to the professional because I think all of us working from home and adjusting to this new order, I call it, like Anno Dominion before Christ, just like before COVID and after COVID. But professionally, in our context, we were a startup. We were born in the pandemic. We grew from a company with few founders to a few hundred employees within the pandemic. We got the license to operate by the government within the pandemic. We went out and built the networks during pandemic. Our future customers, you can take your guesses, accelerated the demand while we built that. And we were all sitting at home while we began to hunt for our first offices, interview employees, get them on board, get them on the streets. And mind you, connectivity is a bricks and mortars business. It's a 24/7 business. So we had troops out there building those fiber across 7 cities, 12,500 kilometers of fiber, 200 nodes, and customers at our neck looking to climb that network ahead of time. So I couldn't complain for that work. I really think it gave us the opportunity to think completely new. I told you before, we built an entire backend right up on the cloud with no in-prem. We questioned every design first order to make it work remotely and in COVID era as opposed to the past. And whether it was hiring, whether it was staffing, whether it was building offices. So it's to an extent been a great learning, almost like a reinvention of how to do business. Finally, I think I'll restrict to 2 or 3 learnings. It's nice to reflect, and I think this panel, I'll take an opportunity. I think I got 3. One is don't plan for what you can't plan for, because nobody planned for it, all right? Number 2 is every unknown is an opportunity. I'm pretty sure all of you also have felt that. And for us, it was important to ingrain it in our system because we're a startup with people just joining in. And unless there was a vision of what the opportunity is in the midst of unknown, there was hardly any energy left. So that was second. Thirdly, and most importantly, I think I learned that the most important thing to focus is on people and talent. If you get the right people, the right organization, the right surroundings, even a pandemic can be good for you. So I'll leave it with that, Jatinder, on a very, very positive note, and I hope all you guys resonate with what I said.
Well said. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Let me pass on the baton to Manjir. Manjir, how do you want to close it? Do you want to raise any questions, or are we totally out of time?
Yeah, actually, we are running out of time, so we would like to take questions offline. Thank you all once again for such wonderful and captivating, informative discussions on diverse industry and startup perspectives of adopting cloud computing, edge, connectivity, networking, and also leaving food for thought for the very positively feeling audience.
Thank you so much. And
Thank you. Thank you.
great day.